This just in, Marvin Bagley is out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken left hand.
This also just in, Marvin Bagley will be releasing a new album in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Check it out.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome to episode 13 of the Royal Report with Calvin and Barry, a Sacramento Kings sports talk show. We do new episodes every Friday and we talk about your Sacramento Kings.
That's right. Thanks for the support out there as always. Thank you for watching. On today's show, De'Aaron Fox continues his stellar play, Tyrese Haliburton gets moved into the starting lineup, and Marvin Bagley is moved out of the lineup altogether. But we begin, as always, with highlights from around the league.
Yeah, we're going to start off with birthdays here. We have 3 members of the Sacramento Kings family that have had birthdays over the last week. I want to wish a very happy birthday to Bobby Jackson, 48th birthday for Bobby. We have a happy birthday for Jabari Parker, 26 years old. And another very happy birthday for our own Marvin Bagley, 22 years old for Marvin. It's amazing to think that Marvin is only 22 years old and Parker is only 26. It feels like he's been in the league for quite a few years now, and it's a little disappointing to think about what could have been with a number 2 overall pick. It's funny, actually, both of them were number 2 overall picks that have dealt with injuries over the course of their careers. We're also going to do a quick update on the NBA trade deadline. We are just under a week away. We're about 6 days away from the trade deadline. No trade news on the Sacramento Kings front. However, there have been a few moves that have happened around the league. I know Meyers Leonard has been in the news over the past week. Call of Duty scandal, racial slur that he put out over his mic. What an idiot. Anyways, Meyers Leonard has been moved to the Oklahoma City Thunder from the Miami Heat. The Thunder do not plan on him being a member of their team, so he will either be moved or cut. Wow, crazy stuff there. The Phoenix Suns continue to add talent to their already incredible roster, picking up Torrey Craig this week. We also have PJ Tucker to the Milwaukee Bucks. That just proves the Bucks are willing to surround Giannis with talent. They continue to add pieces and prove that they are a legitimate contender. And our last deal, or actually, sorry, 2 more updates on the NBA trade front. Bradley Beal is no longer available in trade talks, and neither is Kristaps Porzingis. Mark Cuban put out a statement stating that the Mavericks are only doing a deal for a superstar. So that takes out the Buddy Hield for a Hardaway deal. That takes out a deal for Porzingis. It'll be interesting to see what they do moving on, but good to know where they're thinking right now.
Yeah, no major moves have been made yet in the NBA, but some significant ones to say the least. I think the PJ Tucker deal to Milwaukee is a key one for them, a guy that could be really valuable for them moving forward. So, and like you said, they're committed to winning and still somehow flying under the radar this season. So, a bit of unfortunate news to share with you today. The Dallas Mavericks released a statement saying that Sean Bradley, their former center, is now paralyzed after a bike incident in his hometown in Utah where a car hit him from behind. He is in the hospital recovering and beginning the early stages of rehabilitation. He's said to be in good spirits. We certainly wish Sean a speedy and full recovery. Very terrible news there. Continuing with some current NBA player injury news, Steph Curry is out indefinitely after suffering a tailbone contusion. The Warriors continue to be bitten by the injury bug, and hopefully Steph is not out for too long. Anthony Davis is still sidelined. He is said to have progressed into the next stage of his rehab. However, he's not cleared to play or practice and will be reevaluated in another 2 weeks. And our own Marvin Bagley has broken his hand. He is now out 4 to 6 weeks. Another setback for young Marvin, who, like we said, celebrated a birthday earlier this week. We certainly hope that he's back on the court sooner than later. To some positive NBA news, St. Patrick's Day was a party for a few players in the NBA. A record six players recorded a triple-double all in the same day. Draymond Green, Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, Nikola Jokic, and James Harden, as well as Domantas Sabonis, all had triple-doubles. If you can believe it, this record was broken just a mere 4 days prior to the previous record of 5 set. In fact, 5 of the highest single-day triple-double totals in the NBA's history have all come in this calendar year, since February. It just goes to show there are a ton of players who can really fill it up in the league today. James Harden led the way for all of those 6 players with a 40-point, 15-assist, 10-rebound triple-double.
Wow. It just, as you mentioned, goes to show how much talent is in the league and how much the game has progressed and the style has changed. There's more passing, more catch and shoot opportunities. Really exciting stuff to watch. As you mentioned, Russell Westbrook, another triple-double, Mr. Triple-Double. That triple-double came this week against the Sacramento Kings in a game that the Kings ended up winning towards the end. We're going to dive right into that after this quick break. We'll be right back, guys.
Gentlemen, tests for electrolyte levels, glucose, CBCs, RBCs, etc. And we've scheduled a 12-lead stress test and neurological battery to include EEG, a reflex test.
The Sacramento Kings went 1-2 this week after blowing 2 leads, one against the Atlanta Hawks, one against the Charlotte Hornets, and capping off the week with a game winner by De'Aaron Fox with 0.7 left. Calvin, tell us about the games this week.
Well, unfortunately, just not a lot of effort and fight is what I saw from Sacramento, particularly on the defensive end. I mean, we said, talking about the Atlanta game specifically, we said on last week's show, hold them under 120 points and you got a chance to win. They scored 121 in that game, but they were really never in it, at least after the first quarter. And that's partly because Trae Young and Clint Capella absolutely had their way with Sacramento, particularly in the pick and roll game and in transition. The Kings were never, ever back on defense in time. Capella had a huge game. Of course, Trae Young did as well, hit some really deep threes late in the game. And a lot of those came on just miscommunications off of switches, where Trae Young would get the ball at the top of the key, back it out after he got the switch, and nobody came to close out on him. He's a guy that it doesn't matter where he is on the court, you have to at least make an effort to close out and have him put the ball on the floor. And then the Charlotte game, again, very disappointing. They, for the second time this year now, had a double-digit lead in the second half and blew it against the Hornets. Much of the same issues for them. And Charlotte's kind of an interesting team. I think they have a lot of similarities to Sacramento. You have Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball in the backcourt, as opposed to De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton in the backcourt for Sacramento. Gordon Hayward and Harrison Barnes have very similar styles to the way they play the game. Even PJ Washington and Marvin Bagley are very similar. And this is a team that we're talking about in Charlotte, who's in 6th place currently in the Eastern Conference and in the playoff standings. And the Kings are on the outside looking in. So, they just did not make enough of an effort defensively. And then they were able to recoup and get it into Washington, get a victory. But they had to do it by the skin of their teeth. And De'Aaron Fox, who's been playing like a man possessed over these last few games, is really the only reason that they were able to come out of that one with a victory.
Yeah, another typical week for Sacramento. The first 2 games, it's the same story every week. Bad free throw shooting, bad 3-point shooting, no defense. They somehow come out to an early lead and then they blow it. You know, that very first game in Atlanta, they came out red hot with 33 points in the first quarter. And the second quarter, they just got destroyed, giving up 38 points. And, you know, that just demoralizes your team. It was a great game for De'Aaron Fox, a great game for Richaun Holmes. Other than that, you know, Buddy Hield didn't show up. 2 for 11 from three-point range for Buddy Hield. And that just went right into that second game against Charlotte. You know, more bad three-point shooting, more bad free throws. Luckily, the Kings were able to end the week on a positive note by coming back in that game against Washington. De'Aaron Fox had that game winner. You know, I was surprised to see Sacramento shot 35 free throws in that game, which is amazing. I think that might be a season high for them. You know, normally we see them in the 15 to 18, 19 range per game, but they shot 83% in that game from free throw range. They shot 35 threes, and they came out with a W. So some positives to see from that game. The Kings still have a ton to work on, but you know, another week of bad defense, bad free throw percentage. I don't know what else to say, Calvin.
Yeah, there really isn't much else to say. We've talked about it for the last few weeks on this show. We've talked about their struggles on defense all season long and well before this season. So until there's a shakeup of this team, either in the actual players that are on it or in the way that they go about giving effort on the defensive end, it's going to be the same story every time we come on the air and talk about them. I'm not really sure what the answer is. We're going to get into it a little bit later. It doesn't look like there are going to be many moves made on this roster. And so to me, that's going to yield a lot of the same results that we've seen over the past couple weeks. And they really are, there is talent in Sacramento. This is a team that, 3 weeks ago, we had just been talking about on a huge upswing. They won 7 games in a row. They had beaten in the same week Denver and the Clippers on the road. And they were really looking like a team that could actually compete for a playoff spot and maybe even make some noise in the playoffs, you know, win 2 or 3 games in that first round series. Now that seems completely out of the question.
Yeah, and you know, as you mentioned, unfortunately, in that Charlotte game, you know, Marvin Bagley goes down with a hand injury. Unfortunate to see that happen. You know, it's not the first time we've seen this story, so kind of seeing that again. And interestingly enough, you know, we have talked a lot about Bradley Beal on this show and wanting to bring him to Sacramento, and we hear this week about he is not available. But that De'Aaron Fox game winner was over Bradley Beal, and De'Aaron's girl Reese wrote on Twitter after the game that it would be amazing to see Bradley Beal and De'Aaron on the same team. So look into that however you want to. But another week of Kings basketball, and we'll be right back. We're going to jump into some specific players.
Just continue to be aggressive.
Fox missed it, rebounded by Bagley, banging away against Williams and Carter.
Welcome back. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Marvin Bagley is now out for 4 to 6 weeks with a broken hand. Unfortunately, another setback in the very young career for the former Duke standout. You got to feel for him, just like you feel for any player who has been riddled with injuries throughout his career and can't really seem to get a whole lot of traction going. One of the best things that we've said about Marvin all year long is that he's been healthy and available, even though he wasn't necessarily a guy that Luke Walton was going with in his late game lineups or playing big time starters minutes. He was gaining valuable experience and he was playing very well in spurts for Sacramento. There were a lot of positive things to take away from Marvin's play up until this point. But now the Kings are left with a predicament here. The question really is, do you plan to re-sign Marvin, make him a part of your future going forward, or is it time to move on from him? Is it time to just say we need to go in a different direction and see what else we can get? They're in a bit of an unfortunate situation, the team is, that is coming up to the deadline with the fact that he's injured now. So pretty much all trade value has gone out the window. But I personally think that the Kings are better off moving forward, focusing on re-signing Richaun Holmes and making him part of that three-piece for the future with Haliburton and Fox, as opposed to Marvin Bagley. Barry, where do you think Marvin fits into the Kings' future?
Well, some good news on the Marvin Bagley front. The Sacramento Kings released a statement Thursday afternoon stating that Marvin does not need surgery on his broken hand, so that's good. They're gonna take a wait-and-see approach, reevaluate in 4 weeks. But good to hear that he doesn't need surgery on that hand. I know he's been through quite a few of those, so good to hear that. You know, it's really tough with Marvin. You know, he's averaging, 14 points a game this season. He's shooting 35% from three-point range. He's not playing a ton of defense, but, that's something that he was labeled as coming out of college, with short arms. He wasn't a primary defender or shot blocker or anything like that. So nothing I really expected to come out of him. But when I'm thinking about moving forward, I'm looking at the fit between Marvin Bagley and Richaun Holmes. And I don't know if those guys fit together, honestly. I think that the way the NBA is moving and the league is going is, you need one big and you need 4 guys that can rotate and play all positions and move and basically do everything. And we've seen that. We mentioned earlier in the show with the increase in triple doubles and all that. It's a demand for more out of players, and players need to be more versatile. So I think I might consider moving Marvin to the 5 when he comes back from injury and potentially into next year. As you mentioned, trade value from Marvin Bagley is not high right now, due to the injury. But I don't know if he had much of a trade value before then. We had heard teams were afraid of trading for Marvin, not based on injuries or potential or anything like that, but how much they might have to pay him to keep him. He's got 1 more year on his rookie deal, then he's a restricted free agent. In my mind, the Kings don't need to make a move with Marvin in this situation. They have time on their side. They can wait. They can figure it out. I would be more interested in potentially moving Richaun Holmes. I love Richaun Holmes, great player, but his value is much higher than Marvin's. And when you're a team like the Sacramento Kings and your main goal is to add value to your team. And I think Richaun Holmes could bring a lot more value to the Kings in a trade than Marvin Bagley. And the Kings could build around that young core of Bagley, Fox, and Haliburton.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea. The only thing that I don't really like about moving Richaun Holmes is what's the biggest issue that we've talked about with the Kings this year? It's defense and effort. And Richaun Holmes gives 110% effort out there. He's one of the few players that when I watch the Kings really has that fiery mentality and attitude to him. I just don't see that out there from a lot of those guys. And so for that reason and that reason alone, I would much rather keep Richaun on the team as opposed to Marvin.
Yeah, I totally agree there. It's just a matter of what you're going to get. And when you're drafting players with the number 2 overall pick and you're holding them for a few years and then trading them for nothing, you're not going to get ahead that way. So I don't know what's going to happen with Marvin. Hopefully he can rehabilitate and be ready to go in 4 weeks, and we'll move on from there.
Only time will tell.
We'll be right back. We'll jump into Buddy Hield.
Taken away by Fox. Hield up ahead. Buddy Hield all alone.
I had to burn one.
Welcome back, guys. The starting shooting guard for the Sacramento Kings is now Tyrese Haliburton, which means Buddy Hield has been moved to the 3. And that opens up even more questions on whether Buddy Hield has a future with Sacramento, whether he can play and defend the 3, or whether he'll be moved before the deadline. He is not having the best season of his career. He is averaging more threes per game this year. However, his three-point percentage is down overall. He's averaging about 16 points per game this year, and he's shooting, 37% from three. He's averaging a career high in three-pointers with a defender within 2 feet. So he is taking quite a few contested shots, which could be partially the reason for his down field goal percentage and three-point percentage specifically. But there's been a lot of talk about schematics and Luke Walton's using of Buddy Hield. You look at the stats, Buddy Hield is a catch and shoot player. He is averaging 6.5 catch and shoot threes per game this year. That is a career high for him, yet his percentage is down. Why is that, Calvin?
It's a good question. I'm not totally sure. It could be for a wide range of reasons. One thing that we do know about Buddy Hield is he is a very, very good shooter, but he's always been streaky. So this streak may just be lasting a little bit longer than it has in previous years in his career. We know he can shoot with the best of them. We know he can fill up a stat sheet, but it's not going to be every night. Like you said, his role is a catch and shoot player. And moving to the three, I think, is going to pose a lot more problems for him moving forward, particularly on defense. He already struggles to guard players that are his size, and there, don't get me wrong, a ton of really good shooting guards in the league, but there are some really, really good small forwards in the league, and he definitely has no business trying to guard any of them. So, I wish that there was a deal on the table that Sacramento would really go for in terms of moving him, especially if the plan is to start Tyrese anyway. I think that would be a positive thing for the Kings. And like we've talked about before, just some sort of roster shakeup. This team, it feels like there is, the mountain is here and they're close to getting to the top of it, but they're just not going to get over that hump. And I think that moving a guy like Buddy Hield would be one of the first moves that I would make in order to shake things up, to try and change things moving forward.
Yeah, you look at Buddy Hield, he's averaging, 4 minutes a game more this season than last year. He's been a starter this whole year, so he doesn't have anything to, I guess, blame his lack of production on this season. The game has been there for him to take advantage of, and he simply hasn't done it. Nothing personal against Buddy. I like him. I like his work ethic, but someone that struggles on the defensive end of the floor as much as him, and you look at somebody that has a work ethic as hard as him, and when you're working that hard but you're not getting better on defense, then that puts up a red flag for me. And Buddy got his money, he got his minutes, he got his starting position, and nothing's changed for the Sacramento Kings. So I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There, at the end of last season, all the reports that we heard coming out were that Buddy was very unhappy with his current situation, that the team was going to look to move forward. And what did they do? They doubled down incredibly hard on him as a person and as a player. They backed him. They said, we want him. We expect him to return, or expect him to show up first day of training camp. He's a part of this team moving forward. They've done everything that they need to do. They've said everything they need to say. And Coach Walton has, abided by all of that by putting him in the starting lineup even when he benched him towards the end of last year. So he's been given every opportunity. He's one of those players that is a very valuable piece on a winning team because of how good of a shooter he is. The problem is that the Kings are not a winning team. And so his value is decreased, on the current state of the Sacramento Kings roster.
Yeah, and like Harrison Barnes, he's 28 years old, and his age might not line up with the trajectory of this Sacramento Kings roster. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll jump right into trades and discuss some Buddy Hield deals.
When I ask you, and I will ask you, and then you can answer. Neil Washington, deal or no deal?
Welcome back. The trade deadline is rapidly approaching. It's been a very hot topic on our show in particular. However, the Sacramento Kings, all trade talks seem to be cooling off. All reports are indicating that little to no players on the roster will end up being traded. Part of the reason, reportedly, is that there haven't been any deals that have, quote, blown the Kings away, which you certainly can't blame them about. But another report is also indicating that the Sacramento Kings owner, Vivek Ranadive, has put his stamp on the fact that he doesn't want to see particular players like Buddy Hield be traded. I personally don't think that this is the right move for Sacramento. I think they need to make at least 1-2 deals to shake things up, try and get some new players, and really try to focus on maybe acquiring some future assets, including draft picks. If the Kings owner, Vivek, really is stepping in and saying that he wants to not move any of these particular players, I think it's a terrible move. Owners who overstep their boundaries really hinder a team's potential and a team's productivity on the court. We've seen it time and time again. If you look at some of the organizations that have been put in great positions by their owners, the LA Clippers come first to my mind. Steve Ballmer is willing to do whatever it takes to make that team great. He hired Jerry West to make all the decisions, and he stands out of it. And that's definitely the way I think that the Kings owner should be playing this as well. I'd love to hear what Monty McNair has to say about all of this, if he is on the same page as Vivek. Barry, I'd really like to see the Kings make some moves. First and foremost, a change at head coach, and secondly, some moves hoping to acquire future assets and draft picks. What about you?
Yeah, I think they definitely need to make some moves. You know, I was really happy with Vivek this year. We didn't hear much from him until this last week, and then boom. All of a sudden, we hear something out of his office. He doesn't want to get rid of Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes. Nothing new there. You know, Vivek has been a fan of Harrison Barnes for a really long time. He was a minority owner with the Golden State Warriors when they drafted Harrison Barnes in 2012. He was also, a big fanatic of Buddy Hield. He made the infamous trade for Buddy for DeMarcus Cousins and stated that Buddy Hield is going to be the next Steph Curry. So we know Vivek has love for his players, and as a fan, when I listen to what he's saying, it makes sense to me. You don't want your team to tank and lose games and not be competitive. That makes sense. But at the same time, you hired an awesome GM in Monty McNair, a young guy with lots of potential. He's got great connections around the league. Let him do his job. Let him do what's best for the Kings, because that's what you hired him for. And, nobody wants a micromanager. So moving on, there are a few moves that I would do if I were in charge of the Sacramento Kings. I don't know. I know I'd called a few weeks ago for the firing of Luke Walton. I don't know if I would do that at this point. I think that it's obvious they're going to lose a ton of games for the rest of the year. And I think Luke Walton's a good guy to blame it on. So I'm probably going to keep Luke through the rest of the year. I'm going to keep De'Aaron Fox. I'm going to have a meeting with him. And I'm going to make him involved in all my decisions, because he is the future of this franchise. And I want him on board. I don't want to end up 2 years down the road through a potential rebuild and De'Aaron Fox decides he wants out. So I'm going to make him as involved as I can. The next move I'm doing is I'm moving Buddy Hield. As I mentioned in the previous segment, his defense does not cut it for me. Great shooter, but when he is on a slump, he doesn't do much for the Kings. And that's the thing about the NBA, is you got to be consistent, and you got to be available, and you got to be scoring every night. And he simply hasn't done that. So I'm looking to move Buddy. My number one destination for him, outside of a deal for Bradley Beal or anything like that, would be to the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm going to target that guy, Matisse Thybulle. I'm still a big fan of his. I like Shake Milton. I like Tyrese Maxey. And I like a couple first-round picks from them. So if I'm doing a deal, I'm trying to get Buddy Hield to Philadelphia. I'm trying to get 2 of those young guys and maybe a draft pick. If I'm Monty McNair, I'm calling up my mentor, Daryl Morey, and I'm saying, help me make my first trade. The next move I'm doing is I am going to move Harrison Barnes. Big fan of Harrison. I love what he's done for this team. I love the leader that he's been, the constant professional he has been. But my number one priority this trade deadline and actually coming in this offseason is going to be acquiring assets. And Harrison Barnes, his stock is high right now. So I'm going to sell while it's high. I'm either going to send him to Boston for a couple young players and some draft picks, or to another team for young players. That's what this roster needs. It needs an influx of young players. It needs talent. It needs assets that it can build around or potentially flip for another big player this upcoming offseason or next year. So that's going to be the next move I make. And the final move I'm going to make is I am going to move Marvin Bagley to the 5, and I'm going to trade Richaun Holmes. I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of Richaun. I love his game. As you had mentioned, Calvin, hustle, effort, defense is what this team needs, and Richaun has done that every single night. I would be very sad to see him go, but unfortunately, I don't think he fits with Marvin Bagley, and I think you're going to get a lot more from him in a trade than Marvin Bagley. So I would be interested in moving Richaun Holmes for assets. And then I will let this team play out the rest of the season and reevaluate myself in this coming offseason. Calvin, if you're stepping in Monty's shoes, what's on your punch list?
Well, it's going to be to, like you said, make some moves, and I'm really focused on draft picks. You know, when you talk about tanking, it's to lose games in order to get that high draft pick, to get your first piece, right? But the Kings already have probably 2 pieces in Fox and Haliburton. So they're already losing games. They're already on track to be a lottery pick. Why not try to leverage yourself, gain more draft equity, get some more draft picks, which you can either use in those drafts and try and hit big on some key players that are going to help your team going forward, or you can also then use those draft picks to trade for somebody who's in more of a win now window. So, you know, I like we've said before, this team it feels like they're plateauing. It feels like they've reached the hump that they can't seem to get over. And in order to do that, you've got to break things up a little bit. So all of those moves that you mentioned, I think, would be places that I would look. I would definitely trade Buddy Hield. That would probably be the first piece to go. And depending on what I can get back for Harrison Barnes, I would consider moving him as well. But to me, it's about the draft right now, because you've got a great starting point in your backcourt with Fox and Haliburton. And if you could end up landing a guy like Evan Mobley, who is in this draft, big man out of USC, those 3 right there would be a fantastic beginning to build around, that are all really young on the same timeline. So
yeah, and I'm trying to move Whiteside. I'm trying to move Corey Joseph. I'm trying to move Bielitsa. I'm just doing whatever I can to pick up as many assets as I can to potentially make a deal in the future. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to jump into De'Aaron Fox, the man that we are building around. We'll be right back, guys.
He's guarding Fox. Fox, difficult shot, makes it look easy.
Welcome back. De'Aaron Fox has continued to elevate his game every year that he's been a member of the Sacramento Kings and in the NBA. This year is no different. His last 5 games, as you can take a look at the numbers here, he's played out of his mind. And he's really been one of the lone bright spots in a very up and down season for the Sacramento Kings. Bottom line for me is, as good as De'Aaron is, he cannot do it himself. nobody can in this league. In the NBA, you need 2, and in today's league, really 3 great players in order to be a serious contender to win a championship. De'Aaron has given everything he can to this team, and he, like we said, continued to get better and better and better, and he's making all the right progression plays that we'd like to see from him. But at some point, the Kings have to go out there and get him some help. And whether that's making a big-time trade, drafting another big-time player who's going to be, a superstar in this league as well, or an all-star level player as well, or signing somebody in free agency, they're never going to get to where they ultimately want to be and where De'Aaron ultimately wants to be, and that's a contending team if he's out there doing things by himself. Barry, what can we do to help this man?
The trades I mentioned in the last segment, he needs guys that can build around him. And, De'Aaron Fox is the man. And, one of the lone bright spots this season for the Sacramento Kings is De'Aaron Fox has established himself as a franchise player, a franchise cornerstone player. He's legit, man. There's players around the league commenting on him, saying he's a great player. They have finally taken notice of De'Aaron Fox, and I'm happy to see it. You mentioned the last 5 games. We showed the stats. He's had a great last 5 games. But in all reality, he's had an awesome season overall. We've seen him improve his 3-point percentage, improve points per game, improve assists, lower his turnover ratio. He's all over the floor. De'Aaron Fox has had an impressive season, capped by some game winners. Over the last 10 games, he's averaged 27.7 points per game, 8.9 assists per game, and 3.2 rebounds per game. Those are superstar numbers, Calvin. And as you had stated, he just needs help. Monty McNair needs to do whatever he can do to keep this man happy, to keep this man in Sacramento, to keep this man motivated. And everything we've seen out of De'Aaron Fox has been positive for the Sacramento Kings. He wants to be on this team. He wants to win with this team. And as a fan, that's all you can ask for from your best player.
Absolutely. I really hope that De'Aaron Fox doesn't become Bradley Beal. As great a player as Bradley Beal is, it feels like a very similar situation, just 4 years in the future, right? He's stuck on a bad team, but he's loyal to that team. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to see things done the right way. He wants to win games there. Guys like that and Damian Lillard are a dime a dozen in this league. But the problem is, if you don't get them help and do the things that are required in order to build around that player and make the team good, you either waste the prime of their career or they're going to leave. So the Kings have to do something, and they have to do it relatively quick.
Yeah, and if I were the Sacramento Kings, I would be looking at those Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are doing horrible. And you look just a few years ago, they had such a bright future. Reggie Jackson, Tobias Harris, Blake Griffin, and Andre Drummond. And they turned all of those players into a second-round draft pick.
One
second-round draft pick. We don't want to follow in those footsteps.
Haliburton, the corner 3, got it, and the foul on the...
Well, Calvin, it's official. 4 games back from injury, and Tyrese Haliburton is officially the starting shooting guard of the Sacramento Kings. He is having a great rookie season, 13 points per game, 5 assists per game, and shooting 42% from 3-point range. What an incredible season. What a lucky draft pick at number 12. I know I'm happy to have him on the Sacramento Kings. I know you are too, Calvin. What a wonderful game he had against Washington. 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. I'm happy to have him in the starting lineup. Calvin, how are you feeling about Haliburton?
I feel great about Tyrese. This is a little bit of a formality in some regards. I mean, he was already, before he got hurt, playing upwards of 30 minutes a game. Those are starters minutes anyway. He was on the court late in games in the fourth quarter when they needed their best players out there. So, giving him the label of starter is kind of just like when you've been seeing somebody for a long time and you decide, oh, well, I guess we're in a relationship now. So, this also is the reason this happened is because Marvin Bagley is hurt. It's not that Tyrese necessarily broke his way into the starting lineup on his own, even though I think he probably had a good chance to do that whether or not Marvin got hurt. I think it's a good move regardless. It gives the Kings, an opportunity to get a brief look into what the future is like, playing with Tyrese and De'Aaron on the court all the time together. So, and how can you argue with this move, really? I mean, he's played fantastic, like you said. You've listed all the numbers. He's having a Rookie of the Year potential campaign right now. So I'm happy for Tyrese, and I hope that it ultimately results in more wins for Sacramento going forward.
Yeah, and you look at as something we talked about all season, and that's defense. The Kings have struggled on the defensive end of the floor. If you lose a starter, who else are you going to move into the starting lineup? Tyrese Haliburton was the 6th best player. He's probably more like the 3rd best player. But you look at the roster, he's obviously going to be the guy filling into that starting lineup. He's a much better defender. So, is he going to bring the defense to that 2 spot? And what's going to happen with Buddy moving to the 3? So, is that going to kind of cancel each other out, or are we going to see some improved defense from the Kings moving on?
Well, defense is a team effort, so in order for them to improve, it's going to require more than just Tyrese out there. But one thing I will say is Tyrese is a fantastic defender, and where he really excels is in help defense, which is such a crucial part of great team defense in today's NBA. He plays passing lanes spectacularly well, and that is something that can help account for when you have somebody who's not quite as good of an individual or an on-ball defender like Buddy Hield is. So it certainly isn't going to hurt them to have Tyrese out there playing more minutes and in a starting role on either end of the court, offensively or defensively.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to what happens here at the deadline, and if the Kings are able to add any more depth to this squad. Injuries, affect depth. Moving him to the starting lineup, we wonder where those points and those assists are going to come from off the bench. But I'm sure that's something we will see moving on. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to jump into Cowbell questions. That's right, questions from you, the fans.
Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
Welcome back. We're turning the show over to you loyal Royals out there for Cowbell questions. Thank you, as always, for your submissions. We got a big influx of questions from the Miller household this week. Thank you guys so much for your questions. Let's get right to it with the first one from our announcer.
Will next season start in the winter like this year?
I don't expect the season to start in the winter again. I know that a lot of figures in the NBA were kind of intrigued by the idea of starting around Christmas time every year. I just don't think that logistically it's going to work out for this year in particular. I expect them to start in October like a normal season would be. And the biggest reason for that for me is I can't see the owners letting that much more time elapse when they could be playing games with a full house potentially of fans in the stands. A lot of teams, small market teams, are losing a ton of money. The Sacramento Kings are one of those teams. And I think that the quicker they can try to start rebuilding some of that lost revenue, they will absolutely go for that.
Yeah, you look at the Kings, they reported they lost like $1 billion. They filed an insurance claim which was denied for lost revenue from the stadium. You look at the vaccinations and how that's all working out. The NBA has released new COVID protocols for vaccinated players or teams that have achieved 85% of players and staff as fully vaccinated or 2 weeks past their final dose of the vaccine. They are allowed to mingle at their house, have people over without masks on. They can go out to eat in outdoor establishments, and they can have up to 5 visitors for road games, stuff like that. So as you see the NBA start to loosen up on things like that, it does give me some hope that we will see a normal NBA season next year. Obviously, there are some hurdles to still go over. The virus is still, well around us. We do have the Summer Olympics this year. This season is going a little bit later than normal. And we did have a quick turnaround between last season and this season. So all those could potentially add up to this next season being delayed. But I'm going to side on the side of positivity, and I'm going to say that the NBA season will start on time this year. Next question.
Of current NBA head coaches, rank the 5 best careers as players.
This was a great question. Certainly made us do a lot of research in order to make sure that we had, part of the problem is just knowing who are all the NBA head coaches and how much they played in their careers. But Barry and I compiled this list together, so we're going to give it to you right here.
And Luke Walton is not on the list.
Unfortunately, Luke did not make the cut. But number 1, this is a pretty obvious one, I would think. Steve Nash, 2-time MVP, 7-time All-NBA, averaged 14 points and 8.5 assists for his career, and he very nearly shot 50, 40, 90 for his entire career. Just missed it by shooting 49% from the field. So I think obviously Nash is number 1. Number 2, we're going with Doc Rivers, a 1-time All-Star, averaged 11 points and 6 assists for his career, mostly with the Atlanta Hawks. Number 3, Steve Kerr, 5-time NBA champion. Yeah, he did play on some pretty good teams. It wasn't really all him, but he is still the career record holder for 3-point field goal percentage at 45.4%. He also took a punch from Michael Jordan in the face in practice and still got Jordan to pass the ball to him for the game-winning, series-clinching shot in the '97 NBA Finals, which is very impressive.
I thought he might be number 2, but...
I think Rivers was a little bit better of a player. Okay, number 4, Nate McMillan. For anybody out there who never really saw Nate McMillan play, he was a phenomenal defender, 2-time All-Defensive Team member. He was the 93-94 Steals champ as well for the Supersonics back when Seattle had a basketball team. He averaged 6 points and 6 assists for his career. And rounding out the top 5, Tyronn Lue, 2-time NBA champion, averaged 8.5 points and shot 39% from 3 for his career, which I bet you didn't know. You only know him as the guy Allen Iverson stepped over.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to Nate McMillan. I know he's been mentioned to be on the hot seat. He's done a wonderful job in Indiana, did a wonderful job in Portland, and if he is available, the Sacramento Kings need to go after this guy.
He's killing it in Atlanta right now. They're streaking.
What All-Star event would you drop, and with what would you replace it?
Man, I don't know. Can I vote to just get rid of the game altogether? The game really itself has become far less entertaining to me than it had been, back in maybe the early to mid 90s. I don't know. Maybe we just replace it with that 3-on-3 tournament that they were talking about before. There could be some bigger incentive. I'm a big fan of the slam dunk contest. I don't want to get rid of that, even though a lot of people are saying it's lost its luster. Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon really revived it, in my opinion. So let's get rid of the game altogether.
That's a tough take there. I don't know if I want to get rid of the All-Star game. I think I might want to put a bigger incentive on winning the All-Star game. I love what they do in baseball. Winner of the All-Star game, home court advantage in the playoffs. I think that would be perfect for the NBA if they're willing to divide All-Stars again by East and West, and whoever wins that game will get home court in the finals. I think you could really add some more competition to that. But for me personally, I think it's got to be the three-point competition. I feel like it's just kind of, it's lost it for me anyways. With the amount of threes that are shot every game is a three-point competition. And we pretty much know that every guy in the league can shoot threes. So unless they're going to move the line back and make it that 4-point shot from big three or something like that, I'd probably get rid of the three-point competition. I don't know what I would replace it with at this point, but it's got to be something entertaining. Maybe a rap battle or something like that. Marvin Bagley or Damian Lillard could probably do pretty well in that. I also like that, Velcro suit at the carnivals, where you run and you jump off the trampoline and stick yourself to the wall. Maybe we could showcase hops with that or something like that. Anything but the three-point competition for me.
Sounds like it would be part of the skills challenge. Thank you, as always, for your submissions. We look forward to hearing from you every week. If you have a question that you'd like to hear answered by Barry and myself on the show, go ahead and write it in the comments below this video. You can even hashtag it with Cowbell questions, and we will do our best to answer it for you next week. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Coming up, we have the busiest week of the NBA season for the Sacramento Kings. 5 games this week. One of them tonight. We have a doubleheader, actually 2 doubleheaders this week. The Kings are facing off tonight against the Celtics. They have a back-to-back tomorrow against the Philadelphia 76ers. Then they move on to face the Cavaliers, and then a back-to-back with the Atlanta Hawks and the Golden State Warriors. 5 tough games this week. It is going to be another rough week for us Sacramento Kings fans. We also have the trade deadline coming up next Thursday. So lots of action this week besides games, but we are going to have our schedule full.
Yeah, no rest for the weary, right? They're finishing up this road trip. Best of luck to the Sacramento Kings. I hope they can come out and salvage a few victories, even though the competition is definitely going to be tough and stiff. Thank you for watching. That's our show for this week. We'll be back next Friday with another episode of the Royal Report.
Thanks, guys. Go Kings.